Hello, BookTube, and welcome to Friday Reads. This is a venerable BookTube tradition where we all get together at the end of every week and talk about what we've read recently and what we plan on reading and what we thought of it all. I love it. I love watching Friday Reads videos, even though they're harder to hold on to in this in 2020 because Fridays and weeks and weekends have taken on a very disturbed and unformed nature for a lot of people. And I can't do normal Friday reads on this channel anyway because it would be 2 hours long with all the stuff that I have read recently, all the stuff that I am reading, all the stuff that I'm going to read. So I've got an abbreviated version that I want to show you. 2 books that I have already read that I'm going to be rereading this weekend, and 2 that I have not read that I will finally be getting to this weekend. The first one that I have already read is an older one. This is from 2017. It made a good impression on me when I first read it, and that's why I'm going to go back to it. And it is this thing. It's by Suzanne Rindell, and it's called '3martiniLunch. And it's a trade paperback novel about the publishing world. In 1958, Greenwich Village buzzes with beatniks, jazz clubs, and new ideas. It's the ideal spot for 3 ambitious young people to meet. Cliff Nelson, the son of a successful book editor, is convinced he's the next Kerouac. If only his father would notice. Eden Katz dreams of being an editor but is shocked when she encounters roadblocks to her ambition. And Miles Tillman, a talented writer from Harlan, sets out to learn the truth about his father's past and discovers more than he expected. Though very different, all 3 share a common goal: to succeed in the competitive and uncompromising world of book publishing, at a time when traditions are being tossed aside. As Cliff, Eden, and Miles reach for what they want, they come to understand what they must sacrifice, conceal, and betray to achieve their goals, learning they must live with the consequences of their choices. And I thought that this was really good when I read it 3 years ago. But I was bothered by the fact that one of those 3 narratives is so much weaker than the other 2. And I don't know. The reason why I'm rereading this is I'm not 100% sure that that was true. I'm not 100% sure. I want to check to make sure that that was true about the book. And that maybe 2 of the plot lines are much more my alley and the other one is not. And maybe that's why I thought it was the weaker of the 3. So I'm going to try this again. It'll be enjoyable anyway. I really enjoyed it the first time. And then the second book that I've already read that I'm going to reread is something that we just saw on this channel. I read it overnight in pretty much one gulp. I'm going to read it again slowly with a pencil in hand, but I loved it. I thought it was just fantastic, and I strongly recommend it. And it's this, The Deviance War by Eric Cervini, which is about one man and his struggle for gay equality in mid-20th century America. Let me read you a bit about it in case you didn't see that earlier video. In 1957, Frank Kameny, a young astronomer working for the U.S. Department of Defense in Hawaii, received a summons to report immediately to Washington, D.C. The Pentagon had reason to believe he was a homosexual, and after a series of humiliating interviews, he, like countless gay men and women before him, was promptly dismissed from his government job. Unlike many others, he chooses to fight back, and Eric Cervini tells his story in this book. And it manages, this is Cervini's first book, and that makes what he manages in here all the more impressive, because he manages to tell not only, it's a very tricky feat, plenty of more experienced nonfiction writers try it and fail. He manages to tell not only Kameny's individual story in enormous detail. I doubt there'll ever be a better book on the subject. This author had access to a huge amount of primary documentation. But also the larger contextual story, the broader context of the slowly, gropingly evolving gay rights of the 20th century. Both those stories are told well in this book, really well. At one point in his acknowledgement, the author says that he did a senior thesis on Kameny and on this whole subject, but that the more he thought about it, the more he thought that it deserved a book, is the way he puts it. He's absolutely right. It did, and this is that book. It's a must-have addition to your gay nonfiction library. So I wanted to mention that for a Friday Reads because it tremendously impressed me. I'm going to read it again far more slowly. I'm going to interrogate some of its sources, some of its historical claims, but I don't imagine that my opinion is going to go anywhere but up. So, and then we have 2 books that I haven't read yet. That I've got them a long time ago on this channel. We unboxed them in the mail, and I finally reached them. We're finally at June, and I think these are both still June releases. They're both biographies, not very long biographies, but then again, you can't have everything. This first one is by David Schonbaum. A lot of you will know. Some of you will know his books, and this is The Lives of Isaac Stern, his rather thin biography of the great violinist Isaac Stern. Uh, let's see here. No single American could personify what Henry Luce called the American century, but Isaac Stern comes closer than most. Despite modest origins as the child of Jewish immigrants in San Francisco, by the early 1940s, talent and practice had brought him to Carnegie Hall debut, critical acclaim, and the attention of the legendary Saul Hurok. As America came of age, so too did Stern. He would go on to make music on 5 continents, record in formats over 70 RPM to digital, friends as different as Frank Sinatra and Isaiah Berlin, and policy from Carnegie Hall to Washington, Jerusalem, and Shanghai. He also loaned instruments to young players, brokered gigs for Soviet emigres, and replied in person to inquiring 5th graders. Wide-ranging yet intimate, The Lives of Isaac Stern is a portrait of an artist and musical statesman who began as a first-generation American dreamer and left behind a profound musical and cultural legacy. I'm a huge fan of Isaac Stern. A huge fan. I've seen him many, many times in concert, and no matter what, that was always the highlight of my season whenever I managed to see him. But I've never read a biography of him, don't know anything about him, and I will. And this next one's pretty much the same thing. This is a figure that I know from historical mentions and whatnot, but never a whole biography. This is by Toby Musgrave, and it's the Multifarious Mr Banks. From Botany Bay to Kew, the natural historian who shaped the world. And there he is as a young super hottie. By Joshua Reynolds, I believe. Is that right? Is this cover Joshua Reynolds? No, now that I think of it, it doesn't look like him. Not completely, not in the details, but of course this doesn't tell me. This is an advanced copy. I don't know that I'm ever going to get a finished copy. But let's see here. As official botanist on James Cook's first circumnavigation, the longest-serving president of the Royal Society, advisor to King George III, and, quote, the father of Australia, the man who established Kew as the world's leading botanical garden, Sir Joseph Banks, was integral to the English Enlightenment. Yet he has not received the recognition that his multifarious achievements deserve. In this engaging account, Tony Musgrave reveals the true extent of Banks's contributions to science and to Britain. From an early age, Banks pursued his passion for natural history through study and extensive travel, most famously on the HMS Endeavour. He went on to become a pivotal figure in the advancement of British science, economy, and colonial interests. With his inquiring, enterprising mind and extensive network of correspondence, Banks' reputation and influence were global. Drawing widely on Banks's writing, Musgrave sheds light on his profound impact on British science and empire in an age of rapid development. And I'm all for that. This is a full-length, full-dress biography of a figure I know virtually nothing about. So in both these cases, I'm going to learn a lot about people whose name I am familiar with. That's one of the things I love about biography. I'm a little bit sad to think that I won't get finished copies for my library of either of these. Maybe I will. But in the meantime, I'm happy to bolt down biographies, as you well know. So that is a little abbreviated Friday Reads for you. We have 2 books that I haven't read yet, 2 biographies. One on Joseph Banks, one on Isaac Stern. And then we have 2 books that I have read. Three-Martini-Lunch I'll be revisiting just to assess it. And The Deviants' War I'll be revisiting mainly to enjoy it. I mean, I'll have a pencil in hand, I'll be taking notes. And I'll be working it up for a review. I'm sure that I will review this. But I wanted to mention it anyway because a lot of you have said you like it when I tell you what I think about the books that I get in the mail. And this was terrific. Absolutely terrific. Doesn't read like a first book at all. So I was impressed, and I think if the subject fits, if the subject aligns with what you're interested in, you're going to love it. So that's it. That is your Friday Reads for today. A little bit abbreviated, but of course I want to know what you're working on this weekend, what you've just read, what you're going to read. I love watching Friday Reads videos, but I also love hearing about Friday Reads from the rest of you. So I'm going to wrap this up for now. That is my Friday Reads, and we will be in touch tomorrow. Thank you, BookTube.